Just after noon time here on Monday, March 11th. Happy free agency to you, partner. The legal tampering window is open. 2024 free agency is on deck, and there are already a slew of moves that have been made since this negotiating window opened up about 20 minutes ago. So welcome into an impromptu, spontaneous, even though we told you about it, we're going to be experimenting with a noon live stream window this week. Yeah, it was anything but impromptu and spontaneous, but we're looking forward to getting into a number of things here. I'm Bobby Trosset, as always, alongside Sarah Ellison. And here's what you can expect throughout the course of this live stream. We'll begin with Justin Madubuike, Sarah, who just finished up his press conference a short while ago after being extended. The last time we talked, he was franchise tagged. Now he's a Raven for the foreseeable future, thanks to Eric DeCosta and the organization for getting that done. Some Ravens rumors, specifically at the running back position. And it's been an active one at the running back position since this negotiating window opened up 20 minutes ago. We'll have a bunch of free agency and signings discussion, some quick hits as always. Tyus Bowser talked about his future and broke his silence. What else do we have coming up, partner? I mean, that's
like
just
the
a
AFC
slew.
North signings. We'll talk about league signings because it's the time of the year. But I mean, just welcome to free agency. Let's go. I know it's the tampering period, but it doesn't matter because literally as we've been starting to get this podcast ready, this live one going, there's just news flying all over the place. So yeah, let's go ahead and start with the Ravens signing, the big one that was announced on Friday, made official today. Ravens, 3 days after attacking Justin Madubuike, they go ahead and sign him to a long-term deal. Bobby, this is a no-brainer of a move in terms of keeping and securing this talent. This is a man who just led the league among interior defensive linemen, 13 sacks this last season, a massive jump from his 3 years prior, but something that the Ravens and all of us have been looking forward to is this jump. And so to secure a talent like this, one of the best defensive tackles in the league, securing that for 4 more years, on top of clearing cap space just a few days before free agency begins, and beating Chris Jones and the Chiefs to it, because just a day later after Justin Madubuike was announced his deal in the Ravens, Chris Jones came in with a monster deal. So it was huge that they got that done, and then they just secure their defense at all 3 levels. So it was a no-brainer, and then to get it in when they did was almost just as important as securing the talent itself.
Take us through here, because you went through, as you always do, contractually this time of year, especially last year with Lamar, overall value of deals, average per year, the fully guaranteed number that they receive at signing versus the total guaranteed. So yeah, it was only a day difference, right? Justin comes in one day, and then Chris Jones and Kansas City follow suit the next day, which for EDC clearly was a priority in terms of the market.
Yeah, I had kind of, I put out this tweet before the press conference, and I was kind of speculating, like, I wondered if they had gotten wind of, like, Chris Jones, what was happening on the defensive tackle market, to maybe be the thing that maybe pushed the Ravens. Maybe the Ravens came a little bit more over to Madubuike if they had caught wind. And while Eric DeCosta in that press conference didn't say, yeah, it was because of Chris Jones, he 1000% said, yeah, I was watching the market, and the market certainly helps dictate when these things get done. And he said that I made the decision as a GM to say, you know what, getting this deal done before free agency is going to be advantageous for this club. Yep. And so that's partly just so they could have more money and to be under the cap, but also, and these are the numbers. Chris Jones was the next day. Justin Madubuike, he was 4 years, $98 million. Okay. At $98 million at the time for a day was number 1 in the league in overall value. Then the next day, Chris Jones came in and blew that out of the water. 5 years, $158.75 million. Average per year, Justin Madubuike was number 2, and he was pretty far below Aaron Donald. And everybody was saying, oh, that's because Aaron Donald's the linebacker. Most defensive tackles are coming in under. And that was happening until, again, Chris Jones came around, and then he beat the average per year for Aaron Donald. So now he's at 31.75. The Ravens got Justin Madubuike for 24.5. Bobby, that's like a $7 million difference. And you can argue who's better, but for 20, like people have been asking me, are we sure? Is this a good deal? Hello, $7 million less per year? Yeah. Fully guaranteed at signing. Justin Madubuike was number 2 until
in his prime. He's in his prime. All due respect to Chris. I mean, guy's got some miles on his tires. Like, he's a champion, no doubt. But who would you rather have at this point if you're talking about long term?
right.
I'm going with Madubuike.
It's and Chris Jones. I mean, I don't want to downplay him at all. But for the money, for the ascension that's coming, to your point, the age, fully guaranteed at signing. Chris Jones, $60 million at signing. That was number 1. Justin Madubuike, again, about $7 million under, 53.5, and then total guarantees, which are not really fully guaranteed. You got to make it to certain points on the calendar to get it. But number 1, Chris Jones, $95 million. Justin Madubuike, $20 million less, 75.5. Now those guaranteed monies, I mean, it is impacted by the overall length because Chris Jones is 5 years, but that per year absolutely is not. And I just want to put into context how big of a deal it is that the Ravens made this deal with Justin Madubuike, and how much faith they have in him. Because Eric DaCosta spoke many times. He said probably 2 or 3 times, the most frustrating part of my job is that I can't keep everybody that I like. And I kept thinking of Patrick Queen when he kept repeating that. Like, I know he wishes he could keep Patrick Queen. Like, this stinks. I drafted this guy and he comes on in year 4 and now I have to let him go, and then we could talk about a list of people. I mean, Zadarius Smith, Matthew Judon. It's just like, it's got to be such a frustrating thing. So then he says, then you add on top of that you can't keep everybody. Add on top of that we are in a fortunate position that we have a franchise quarterback and we are paying him a significant amount of the cap. So you have that landscape. Now I really have to be selective, he says. This is his quote. You just can't keep every single player on your team. That's a frustrating aspect of the job that I have. So you have to keep your very best if you can. The guys you feel most strongly about as players, but also as people. The guys who most impact your roster, the most impact your fan base in different ways. And he says, Justin is one of those types of guys. We won't be able to do this with every single instance, unfortunately, but we feel very, very good about what we did this weekend. So think about how much you love Patrick Queen. Think about how much you love some of these guys. The belief that they have in him going forward is tenfold because they couldn't do it for everybody else, but it was him. He's the one that they chose to do it for.
Shall we get to some of these rumors that are circulating related to the running back position in particular? This is one that this was sort of, I think, within the last 20 minutes or so, probably the biggest piece of news, or at least that's gaining the most traction, is the running back position right out of the gate with DeAndre Swift being off the board, but we'll get to that in just a second.
Real quick, before we totally turn the page, I did want to just say one last thing on the one other thing, cap implications. We talked about it with Chris Jones. One other thing, the Ravens were $10 million over the cap.
Yeah.
With this and the way they structured it, where I guess we don't need to go into all of it. We had a slide there for from Brian McFarland.
Yeah.
So the way they structured it exactly got them under the cap. So the cap charge is $12.25 million. Okay. And it was going to be $22 million under the franchise tag. So look at the way, if you look in the yellow there, 12.2 for this year, then it jumps up to 18.7, then 33 million 0.2, and then 33 million 0.7. Sorry to take
that's
back
good.
And forth, but I thought it was important to say that that's another reason for the timing, not just Chris Jones, but for the timing that he was saying it was advantageous to do it that last Friday, because this is big in terms of, like, if you want the Ravens to spend, and now we're going to get to those rumors that are going on, they're not going to be able to spend a lot. We just covered that with not having to let go some, like the Geno Stones and the Patrick Queens. They're not going to be able to spend a lot, but they've now made it, and they haven't touched anybody's contract yet. They haven't cut anybody yet. So they can be a player in the running back market if they choose to be. And then that's the rumor that I cut you off for. I know what you're about to get into.
No, that's perfect, because the last time we cut to what Brian was saying last week, it was like, okay, how can they become cap compliant? Well, they can restructure Lamar to free up 11 and change million, right? Okay, they can cut Tyus to free up like 4 million and change. Now, to your point, none of those are on the table. They still could be, depending on what they decide to do, but they're no longer forced to do so. So we have a couple snippets here from Jamison Hensley of ESPN and Jeff Zaribek of The Athletic, some of their work recently, some of the digging that they've been doing internally to see what the Ravens' strategy is moving forward here at the running back position. You've done the digging here in terms of what their reporting looks like. What do we have so far?
Yeah, so the ESPN report, which is the reporters like the Jamison Hensley of ESPN, right? So it says that the Chargers, Ravens, and Bears are believed to be, quote, serious suitors for Saquon Barkley. And it goes on to say the rival Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys have interest, but aren't expected to reach Barkley's price point. Still, they shouldn't be completely counted out because they are at the very least involved in the running back market. So serious suitors for Saquon. Now, that being said, these ESPN guys are definitely plugged in with agents. So it's not, it's not unheard of where agents will be like, I know that they need a running back, and maybe we've talked in passing once, and so they could like feed that because the agents want to drive up the value, right? So the more people that you say are serious contenders, it's trying to create some desperation for the teams that may really want him. So is there a chance that the Ravens really are serious contenders? Sure. But just also remember, there's also a chance that this is an agent trying to drive up his market. So we don't know how serious that is.
And can I just interject too along those lines, just because we talked about this before we went on. We're going to want to be monitoring Twitter as much as possible throughout this live stream because up to the moment, what's fresh and what's not. As soon as the tampering window began, roughly 32 minutes or so ago, Diana Rossini of The Athletic added a team to this list that in her reporting have strong interest. That's a quote, in signing Saquon. And so that is the Texans, the Eagles, and the Texans. She said as the negotiating window opened up, were those the two teams that she's hearing are expected to have strong interest. So again, doesn't mean anything's imminent, but add another team to that list that you have there at the top.
Yeah, and we know that Swift has already signed with the Bears. We're going to get to that. So I mean, it's moving. Now, the next kind of quote here comes from Jeff Zaribek. So there's usually some fire when you've got multiple people talking about it, but Jeff kind of did an overall overview of the Ravens heading into free agency, and he had a section called potential targets. This is specific to the running back market. He said the Ravens have done their homework on the top, specifically on Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. He says the Ravens have done their homework on the top picks or backs. If the price is right, they could pounce. Okay. He also adds in there as like another potential target, Zach Moss, who's obviously a different tier. And he writes, several available running backs would fit well with the Ravens. Moss stands out as a physical downhill guy who would be a strong complement to Hill and Mitchell's speed and elusiveness.
Okay. So
go ahead.
I was gonna move on to the next back, but if you want to get another thought in there.
Well, yeah, I just was gonna highlight this from Chad Taylor. One of the P said, who would you guys prefer to bring in between Barkley and Henry? You want to go first?
Yeah. Probably not much of a surprise, right? I kind of like Derrick. I've liked Derrick for a long time. I've obviously recognized the interest and the smoke that was out there pre-deadline last season. I think from a fit standpoint, perhaps, I know Saquon's younger. His injury history concerns me a little bit. I know that he is a dual back too. Like he can absolutely help you out in the pass game as well. And that's not just like your simple checkdowns. Like he is dynamic and he is somebody that would absolutely help the Ravens. But if I had to choose right now, I'd like to go with Derrick Henry, especially because of what we learned last week with some of these numbers in terms of what the projection is. Like you could potentially bring in Derrick Henry on an average annual value of, what did we say, like 5 or 6? Is that what the reports were?
Well, no. There were no. The reports were 2 for projection. 2 for 20. The reports were 2 for 20. what I want to make clear, I've been pushing that I don't, as a franchise, want to put more than like $6 million per year to the running back position. And so to me, that seems more doable to do that with Henry than Saquon. So I've been pushing like a 2-year, 12-year deal with Derrick Henry. Whether that's realistic or not on Henry's part, I don't know. But personally, I wouldn't go past $6 million of my cap for the Ravens, knowing what my needs are and how much money I have to spend. And I have more hope that could happen with Henry over Saquon.
Right, because based on some of the reporting from last week, just in terms of projections, I think Diana Rossini even said like there's a tier 1 of like Jacobs and Saquon, right? Like they're in that category. Whereas Derrick's looked at by the market based on some of her reporting in that secondary category.
Because of his age.
Could potentially match up with the monetary value that we're projecting and hoping for. So I would prefer Derrick Henry. How about you?
Again, it's all about money, and I listen. If the Ravens sign either one of them, it's like the NFL just messed up by letting either Saquon or Henry be in the backfield with Lamar Jackson. Okay, the NFL messed up if either one of them make it to Baltimore. But I've been leaning towards Henry because I feel like the money could be more advantageous, and I am slightly concerned about the injury history. But I mean, injuries. Who knows?
Well, think about it too. You could say for different ways with these two backs, injuries or concerns could be similar in the sense that Saquon's injury history comes to mind. That's a concern, like we've said. But then for Derrick, it's like, could that be on the horizon given the amount of miles that he has on his tires? And if you look at league history, not a lot of guys have survived past where Derrick has arrived at.
Right.
And so could that be on the horizon? That's something you have to forecast. That's hard.
With Derrick, you're like, is he going to drop off because of age? And with Saquon, you're like, is he going to get injured again? Those are like the two. That's the risk you're taking with each one.
Yep. And then, gosh, at that position, there's going to be a risk versus reward conversation to have for days. You can even go on to J.K. Dobbins, right? Coming off the Achilles. Sure. Like, is there that much of a risk in terms of what he's worth? Well, no, because he's got to sign a prove it deal. But it's like, what will you have? What's he going to be like coming off these Achilles? We know the ACL was a couple years ago. I mean, gosh, him and Saquon, the similarity is that what if, right? That's what comes to mind. What if these two dudes have stayed healthy throughout the beginning of their careers? Sky's the limit for both of them. Before we get to the next running back position, and particularly Josh Jacobs, as we continue to kind of monitor everything going on right now within the beginning of this legal tampering period as free agency is on deck coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep. Sarah and I and Sarah's kids are big believers in the sleep mask. It's a true 100% blackout for a deeper sleep. You've got C-shaped eye cups for unbeatable side sleep comfort. Zero pressures applied to your eyelids or lashes. It includes advanced materials, ventilation for unmatched breathability. I'm down in Orlando right now on my annual working vacation, and I brought it with me because I don't have the blackout shades here. And there's no need for them because this is literally
Florida.
A lot of sunshine. And whether you're napping, whether you want that deep sleep at night, whatever it might be, on the plane, train, whatever, it's a great way to help your sleep out. And the best part is, if you are a subscriber of the Vault, you can use our discount code VAULT10, VAULT10 at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your next purchase. So all that information can be found in the show notes below. And a special thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring us this offseason here inside the channel. Shall we get to Josh?
Let's do it.
Okay, here's the latest of what we know about Josh Jacobs. Again, considered as one of those upper tier running backs in this year's class. According to Jeremy Fowler, just about an hour or so ago, the Las Vegas Raiders, have been attempting to re-sign Jacobs, according to his sources. But this late in the game, he appears headed to the open market, which he now is in. And so Saquon and Jacobs could go off the board fairly early, according to Fowler. But again, right now, 12:39 p.m. Eastern, both of those guys remain available.
I mean, it's funny because we just had this conversation of like Saquon versus Henry, but I mean, there's obviously many other options, and Josh Jacobs is one of them. If I'm Josh, it's like, I don't know, man. I'm like, we're like, it's like legal tampering period is over. Why wouldn't I be listening right now? So, Raiders waiting to the last minute. And who knows what else they've done in the past, but yeah, that's another guy that, you'd love to see hit the market. And, the more out there, the better.
Here's the first who came off the board, literally minutes into what 12, so 12 minutes into
12
the
minutes in.
tampering window. DeAndre Swift comes off the board first. Chicago Bears went after him hard. A 3-year, $24 million deal he receives, according to Mike Garafolo and Ian Rappaport of NFL Network. And so, yeah, after a career year with Philadelphia, he's going to head on to Chicago and be a big piece of their offense. But this is one of those guys that we had discussed, and now he's first.
Well, that's interesting. So he's first, and he is at $8 million a year. So 3-year, $24 million. That takes you to $8 million.
Yep.
So that kind of tells you something. Like his, I mean, I know these running backs want to get that market up. So again, I wouldn't put him on the same tier as Saquon. So Saquon could probably get more, but I'm sure Saquon would have liked to have seen, Swift get more than $8 million, because then he could try to get more than that. So that's good to know. The first deal coming 12 minutes in is $8 million per year for running back.
Right, the first domino falls. So there you have it. Still on that list, still available. Just to kind of reiterate: Saquon, Derek, Austin Eckler, Jacobs. Who else? Those are kind of the big names.
I'm seeing a lot in the comments, people asking about J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards.
Oh, wait a second, Sarah. Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard here just moments ago. According to Jordan Schultz at the Score Bleacher Report, he is heading to Houston. So Tony Pollard looks to be the second back off the board here going to Houston. We know that the Texans have a need, as does Dallas, as does Baltimore, as does a couple of the other teams looking for running backs. So, yep, Aaron Wilson now comes in. So this is
they don't have any money on Pollard, do they?
Not quite yet. I'm sure the national guys, not that Aaron and Jordan aren't national, but I'm sure some of the bigger names, the Schefters and the Rappaports, will come with that shortly after. But there you have it. So we have Swift headed to Chicago, and now, just moments ago, Pollard is going to Houston.
Interesting.
And we have over 2,600 concurrents right now on our live stream. So great to be with you guys. Thanks so much for being with us. We're kind of experimenting with a noon format this week because of this very reason. Yep. Things are fluid. So if you haven't already done so, please like this video if you've been enjoying it. And also subscribe to The Vault, both here on YouTube and in the audio-only spaces if you haven't already.
All right, so we got the Bears, and we got... Now, you said Texans. I'm seeing Titans.
Really?
That's what My Sports Update has.
For Pollard?
He will pair...
Tony Pollard's headed to Houston. Who are you seeing for Tennessee? Oh, wow. Somebody just edited their tweet. Somebody just edited their tweet. What? Wait a second. What's going on here? Yeah, you're right. A couple guys had to. That's so weird.
Yeah. Titans.
Schultz had to. Okay. So it's Tennessee. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's Tennessee.
Yeah.
So that they're definitely, obviously it was already going to happen, but that's they're like, okay, we'll say goodbye to Henry, enter Tony Pollard. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting. The guys that are perceived to be the top guys are they're not the first to go off.
Yeah, not exactly, right?
So Jacobs and Saquon, at least the news. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But Saquon and Jacobs, as we were just quoting the Diana Rossini tweet from last week, is that those two were perceived to be the top two of the running back market. And so so far they haven't gone, and maybe that's because they're nearing deals, and so these other teams are finishing it up, or it's because they're asking for more than other teams are willing to give.
Yep.
And so we'll see. But yeah, the running back market is already popping off here.
Sorry about that, guys.
So
So the Titans are expected to sign Tony Pollard, like you said, and then DeAndre Swift is heading to Chicago. Those are the two first to come off the market here for at the running back position. It seems like that's starting to kind of gain some steam here. So we'll have to see if other teams sort of react to that immediately. Back to the Ravens, though, because this just came out within the last hour or so from Mike Giardi. And Mike Owenu, he's going to be a very popular man when the clock strikes 12, which is now 45 minutes past noon, according to a few of Mike's sources. And he has the Titans, Giants, Ravens, and Commanders among those believed to be involved. So that's another guy from a defensive standpoint, Sarah, that we'll want to take a look at here on day one.
now he's offensive line.
Oh my gosh.
So looking
I'm
into
having a great
him,
stream here, huh?
so
Football guard, excuse me. He's a guard.
he's a guard / tackle. So 24 starts he's had at right tackle. It's like around 24. 24 starts at right tackle, 24 starts at right guard, and he's had a couple of starts at left guard. So he's one of those guys that can do it all. But that's going to impact how much he gets paid. I'm sure he's going to go to the market saying, I want to be paid as a tackle, right? Yeah. And I'm sure teams will be like, well, we want to pay you as a guard. So that's an interesting one. But we do know that the Ravens love offensive linemen that can be flexible and can move around the line. They love that flexibility. They like that pretty much in all their positions. They like it on defense and they like it along their offensive line. So, again, is that an agent pushing something or is that real interest? So we'll find out. But we obviously know the Ravens are going to want to add to that offensive line. They need at least 2 new starters. Could be 3. I mean, if you want to get crazy, it could be 4. I don't think it's going to be that many, but it's going to be at least 2 or 3 new starters. So that wouldn't be crazy.
Here come the numbers on Tony Pollard as promised.
Give it to me.
Yep, Adam Schefter and Josina literally within seconds of one another. So who has the upper hand? Josina beat Schefter. What a beast.
There you go, Josina.
Go, Josina. So Josina comes in.
Not that I'm against Schefter, but Josina's been on the show and she's great. So friend of the show. Let's go, Josina.
I love it. And let's see if they match up too, just to be in all fairness. So Josina has Pollard. Again, this is Tennessee for Tony Pollard, 3 years, $24 million, which matches up with what DeAndre Swift got.
That's $8 million again.
Let's Chicago.
Keep it. Let's go. Let's keep it. And listen, sorry to be this way. I'm here for the players. Get the money you can get. But I'm also here for the Ravens being able to, load up a backfield next to behind Lamar Jackson. Yeah. And I know that the cap is tight. So get as much money as y'all can get. And at the same time, let's get somebody that the Ravens can actually afford because they, we all know they're tied up against the cap.
So there you have it. 3 years, $24 million for Tony Pollard, who's heading to the Tennessee Titans. DeAndre Swift, that same figure, both lengthwise and overall value, heading to Chicago. 3 years, $24 million. So those are the 2 first backs who are kind of setting this market right now within the first hour of free agency. And so we will continue to watch things. In non-running back news, Jonathan Grenard, who had a heck of a season as a pass rusher for Houston, he is signing a 4-year, $76 million deal, $42 million of which is guaranteed with the Minnesota Vikings. So that is also a big piece of news there. The Ravens obviously saw him in the divisional round, and he gave them fits in that first half, I can remember. Grenard is a bad boy. So he is he's there. And so now let me just make sure. Okay, now Rappaport chimes in with Pollard. So everybody's got Pollard at 3 years, $24 million. I know we're hopping around here a little bit, but bear with us. Thanks for your patience. Yep. Yeah. And so that is that. Shall we get to some of the moves?
Let me say one other thing. I was started to say it, but then the Pollard news came out. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the comment section about J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, some people feeling like Gus is like not getting respect or anything like that. Understand that. Obviously, much love for the Gus bus. Totally underutilized in obviously the last playoff game, and maybe you can go back beyond that. But I do think it's time, especially as he continues to get older, I think it's time to try to go bigger than that. And now that doesn't mean that like they could sign somebody like a big name that we've been talking about and then maybe still have Gus back or maybe have JK in a 1-year deal. I'm not against either of those guys returning, but if we're talking about the first wave of free agency, JK and Gus just aren't going to be in the first wave of free agency. And at this point you want to I want to see a bigger step up. I want to see somebody back there where, because we always talk about how Lamar makes it easier on backs, but I also want backs to make it easier on Lamar. I want it to be like, oh crap, I see Henry back there and I'm nervous about him, and then you forget about Lamar, and it's not just, oh crap, there's Lamar and I'm going to try to forget about a back, So no, like would welcome back either one of those guys, but we're talking first wave of free agency today.
Yep, and that will be later this week, if not later into the month of March. Let's go into the AFC North, though, because this was a pretty big move that came in late last night, and that is the fact that 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback, former Super Bowl champion, somebody who has had a tumultuous couple years, to say the very least, since leaving Seattle and going to Denver, Russell Wilson is going to be seeing the Ravens twice a season from this point forward. Now, it's just a 1-year deal. Russ is heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a team-friendly one. And when I say team-friendly, it ain't team-friendly for Denver. And they only have themselves to blame, Sarah, and Sean Payton maybe, who didn't want to work with Russell. That was pretty obvious. Denver's going to end up paying $38 million of his salary for the 2024 season when he's not even playing for him. He's going to be playing for Pittsburgh. Denver's going to be handling the overwhelming majority of that number. And now they bring in all Pittsburgh does is say, hey, we're bringing him in for the vet minimum. I believe that's $1.2 million. He's going to get a chance. It's going to be an open competition between him and Kenny Pickett. For Kenny, tough, right? You think it's your franchise. You're the franchise quarterback, and you got some injuries and some underwhelming play in your first couple of years in the league. And now you're at a point where here comes Russ. And it sure seems like he's going to have a chance to start week 1 for Pittsburgh and probably is the favorite, you would think, to be that guy.
I mean, I know that in Pittsburgh, they're going to have to play the open competition game, and maybe I'm undervaluing Pickett, but to me that it feels more like lip service than a real thing. And I know they have to because he was a first round pick or whatnot, but you're talking about a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback, and I know it was a disaster in Denver. But count me as a person that's going to be like, I don't know. I'm like, you want to keep an eye on that situation as like, are we going to, is a fresh start and a more stabilized organization. We know that who the Steelers are. It's a stabilized organization. And Mike Tomlin somehow got this team to the playoffs without a franchise quarterback. And so can Pittsburgh breathe new life into Russell Wilson? Better believe I'm going to be checking that out, right? Because now here we are on the AFC North with some massive names. We'll see what Russell Wilson's going to be, but that's a massive name, and it was already a tough division last year, and I'm going to be watching him to see if this is just going to make it tougher. Are we going to see glimpses of the Seahawks? I mean, he's not going to be back in his prime, of course, but are we going to be seeing more glimpses and flashes of that than what we saw in Denver?
Sarah, I would caution those out there who are kind of like pumping their fists from a Ravens perspective about this move.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems as if there's this weird narrative out there that Russ was poor a year ago. Did not play well. And when you look at the numbers, when you really read into it and find the context that's needed to truly answer that question, I don't think he played poorly. I think it was more about the situation that he was in. And his head coach clearly didn't want him there. We all remember the sideline tirade and just a terrible situation overall. The year prior to that, with Nathaniel Hackett, his first year in Denver, yes, ugly,
Right.
ugly. But for 2023, I mean, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, a completion percentage of 66.4. Again, not a lot of help around him. To your point, I think you're going to be with one of the most stable, consistent franchises in the league in a division that is jam-packed. This to me is a breath of fresh air for not only Russ, but for the Steelers. Who knows how long-term this is going to be? Right? They still have Kenny waiting in the wings, you would hope, to be developed and learn underneath him in a mentor-mentee role, even though I'm sure that's the last thing that he wants to do after getting so many opportunities to be the starter, to show that he's the guy. But I get the sense that this is going to be a fresh new chapter for Russ, and the Ravens are going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, so that to me, what I would always do, because you were talking about fans that are just like, oh, cool, we're glad we have him in the AFC North because of what we've seen, and so like to me, it's like you plan for the worst, right? Which the worst would be that he reverts back to his older days and is closer to what he was as a Seahawk, and then the best is that he just doesn't play well again, like he didn't, I know you're making an argument that maybe he played better than it appeared, but hopefully the results, you're hoping the results would be the same from a Baltimore perspective. So you prepare for the worst as if he's going to be a legit Russell Wilson again, and then if he happens to revert, then that's not bad news for the Ravens. That's great news for the Ravens.
Right. So that was one of a couple moves that were really like pertinent to our attention, pertinent to the Ravens in terms of the AFC North look yesterday. The other one happened earlier on in the weekend, and that is the fact that Jerry Jeudy, who's also a Denver Bronco, he is in the process of being traded. And again, none of this will be announced, by the way, by the teams themselves
until Wednesday
at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
It's going to be a frenzy
Yeah.
Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern when all of this gets released. But Jerry Jeudy is apparently Cleveland bound, according to Ian Rappaport, many others who have been on top of this. And so, do you have the compensation off? Was it a 6-rounder in exchange? I think it was a 6th.
It wasn't much. I'll look it up as you're talking.
Yeah. So anyway, Jeudy clearly needed a change of scenery. He was somebody that I would say was pretty polarizing during his time in Denver, a very disappointing start to his career. Man, came out of college and you're thinking like, this is the next dude, and he's shown flashes of that.
Yeah.
But just in talking to some of the folks out in Denver who cover the Broncos that I'm buddy with, like he was just more of a headache. And so now he gets a chance to to have a change of scenery. But for the Ravens, it comes in division. And so Deshaun Watson now with a pretty significant playmaking guy on the outside who, again, has not reached his ceiling yet, but he's going to have a chance to get that fresh start in Cleveland. Sure looks like it Wednesday at 4.
Yeah. So, again, you never can like look past a fresh start. Sometimes that really can inject new blood and life into a player. At the same time, up to this point, Jeudy has not, shown to be like this number one guy that some thought he would be coming out of the draft or, nothing big like that. That being said, adding him to that group again is something to watch. The Ravens are set with their starters. To me, my reaction when I saw that was like, I'd like to make sure we're set depth wise at cornerback because who knows what's going to happen. And I was hoping we would hear something about Ronald Darby before he can hit the market. That's what I would like to see because he can play outside. I think the Ravens have plenty of options on the inside. So that was the first thing I thought was like, okay, Jerry Jeudy's coming. Not the most massive threat, but not nobody either. I don't know. He was like around 700 yards, 800 yards last year. But again, in a disaster area of Denver last year. So now we've got one Bronco with the Steelers. Now we got another former Bronco with the Browns. But that was the first thing I thought. The second thing I thought was his Steve Smith Sr. giving his evaluation of Jerry Jeudy, and we just have to play that as a reminder.
And then he repeated it. So I'll say it again. I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver they use a first-round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you, I will say no, don't trade for Jerry Jeudy because he's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism from people who watch specifically, can he be a wide receiver? He could be a wide receiver. He's a tier 3. Go back into the studio. I'm done now. Thank you.
Brett. Oh, man.
Brett, Steve said he's done. We're going back to the studio.
Oh, man.
So
compensation, by the way, was 5th and 6th round picks.
5th and 6th, yes.
So Cleveland giving up 5th and 6th round picks should be announced official on Wednesday. But Jerry Jeudy is heading to join the Browns playmaking core. Just to give you some perspective on what I was referencing a second ago from some of my Denver people, Zach Bye, 104.3 The Fan personality out there on the radio. Best of luck to Jerry Jeudy in Cleveland, but in Denver, he goes down as an absolute bust of a pick. Highest drafted wide receiver in Denver Broncos history, and he finishes with 0 1,000-yard seasons, averaged less than 3 touchdowns per season, and too often times was simply a headache from dropping pass after pass, yet telling us how open he was. The nonstop cryptic tweets, coming at multiple Broncos legends, beef with Steve Smith, spending the night in jail. I've been over it. To think he was the number 1 in a class with Jefferson and Lamb, that's Justin and CD, and he nets a 5th and a 6th, shaking my head. Oof, that's some Denver perspective right there.
Ooh. Well, it's just funny that to look at those two back to back, and we didn't even plan it that way, between Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy, where the Broncos set a new league record for absorbing the most dead money in a single year. I believe it was about $85 million off the top of my head. And then now you got your guy just talking about how this was a former first rounder. Ooh. And so first of all, you just lost $85 million in cap space. And now there went a former first round pick, and all you got in return was a 5th and 6th. It's like, my goodness, just GM malpractice over there, and I don't know that it's the same GM that made, all the same moves. I'm not that plugged in, but it is the same GM. My goodness. Oh, I know I would feel my seat would be feeling pretty hot over there after those two things. And then the second thing I was going to say is that a lot of times when you read fan comments, and this is across all fan bases, is that sometimes you can't put too much stock into it because there's so much emotion. But one thing I do put stock into is how fans react when a certain player is lost, whether it's to a trade or to free agency, like we just saw. And when they are just ticked off, right? Like everybody here in Baltimore is going to be so sad to see Patrick Queen go. We're all going to be sad to see Geno Smith go. But when you see people celebrating, Jerry Jeudy, goodbye, then it's like, okay, then that kind of lets me know a little bit of the threat level coming over to the AFC North. Still going to prepare for the worst as usual. But when you see other fan bases cheering when somebody's let go, similar to the way the Ravens did when Greg Roman was let go, it's like that. There's some stock to put into that.
No doubt. Just within the last couple minutes along the free agency line before we get to the next piece of news that's sort of relevant to the AFC North, the Packers are releasing 3-time Pro Bowl tackle David Bakhtiari after 11 seasons. Major change in era. We know that he was Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, blindside protector and all. And so now it looks like David's going to be hitting the open market here again Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern when the new league year begins. So there are a couple tackles out there, Sarah, that have quite the resumes, and David is one of them.
5-time All-Pro. Woo! You don't see that happening very often. You don't see it. Tackle is like it's like a not quite the quarterback market, right? But maybe a step underneath where it's hard to find those guys. And even in the draft, we know that it's deep. We know that the draft is deep at tackle and at wide receiver, but we're talking about tackles now. And despite that, it's still going to be like, is there going to be a plug and play tackle by the time the Ravens come around at number 30? Because that's how wanted they are. That's how in demand they are. The supply does not meet the demand in quality left tackle. So that is a huge name. Sounds like he had a $40 million cap hit number for 2024. So that's cap hit, obviously not base salary. So that'll be interesting to watch that. And I still think the Ravens are going to try to use the draft big time to find their next long-term tackle, but something to keep an eye on there.
Man, that guy played 140 games over the last 11 seasons. So
yeah, well, it does. Durable, but from what I'm seeing here, and we're just like doing this on the fly. Had a knee injury. Last game played in September. Is that accurate? That's what we're seeing in comments here. Yeah. So let me look up his 2023 season in terms of how much he was able to play.
Yeah, you do that, and then we'll get to the next piece of AFC North news here, which just came out within the last couple hours from ESPN's Adam Schefter. Bengals franchise wide receiver T. Higgins has requested a trade from the organization. Higgins loves Cincinnati and hoped to be with the team long term, but is disappointed that they have not had any talks about a long-term contract extension since March of 2023. He's ready to move on to a new home. My first reaction to this was like, is this sort of like a similar approach to what Lamar took last year in his negotiations to kind of like use leverage a little bit as the player, right? Make a trade request, get conversation moving, get the buzz going online. Like we all know when John Harbaugh sat down at the owners' meetings for his media session and Lamar clicked send on that tweet of his, like we know how much that kind of got things going, or at least like got the conversation moving externally. Do you think that there's any similarities? Because that was the first thing that popped into my mind here. I know it's very different situations. It's a different position, obviously, and Cincinnati has no shortage of wide receivers that they're going to have to try and keep around, which is difficult when they have those the big three that they have. But that was the first thing that kind of popped into my mind.
It's that an agent is trying to drum up interest?
Well, just from like a
I'm only asking because I was looking up the David Bakhtiari numbers, and so I just want to be clear that I feel like I know your question, but I want to know for sure before I answer it.
Yeah, it's like is this sort of like a leverage thing? Like, does he want to stay in Cincinnati, but like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and request a trade to try and drum up some chaos here almost.
Got you. Sure, but that doesn't mean that it's all like, do I think he's against staying with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in like as a player? No, I mean, I'm sure he was happy with Cincinnati, and in that case, he's been successful. And could they be trying to like put pressure on Cincinnati? Absolutely. And at the same time, he also could be absolutely 100% dead serious, because while he probably feels like he's got a pretty good situation there, if they're saying here he's been disappointed that the team has not had any talks about a long-term contract, and he's coming off of a good year where he feels like, who knows what could happen this next year under the franchise tag. Maybe he does want to get security now. So could it just be trying to put pressure to make sure that they sign him now? Maybe, but if they haven't had any talks,
that's concerning.
like maybe he really is ready to move on. So I wouldn't mind if T. Higgins left the AFC North. I don't need Joe Burrow having that many weapons. So, we'll see.
Think about how difficult it is to keep three big-time wide receivers past their rookie deals. Like trying to keep Boyd, Higgins, and Chase around when everybody kind of feels probably similarly in the sense that like Chase is the guy, like Chase is the one that's deserving of, that number one money. but then T's a prideful guy. His statistics tell you that. And he could be a number one wide receiver in a different team. Maybe he's reached that point where he's realizing, yeah, I can be a number one guy, but it ain't going to happen here.
Right. So, and here's the nice thing. Like, I've seen people being like, ooh, Ravens should do it. Ravens should do it. First of all, if like put the money aside, the Ravens cap situation, the Cincinnati Bengals are not trading a wide receiver like T. Higgins to their AFC North rival who just won the division last year. Even if the Ravens had the money, the Bengals are not going to send them to Baltimore. That's just not going to happen. The other thing I wanted to follow up on in terms of the tackle we were just talking about,
Bakhtiari.
Say his last name again.
David Bakhtiari.
Bakhtiari. Okay. So in terms of durability, he seemed durable, but he does seem to be breaking down a little bit more as the older he's getting. 2021, he played in one game. 2022, he came back, had 11, but didn't do the full season. And then this last year, just one game again. So makes sense why they would cut him. Get that he's an all-pro. We've been dealing with injuries at the tackle position in Baltimore. So as exciting as being there, is, if you were to sign him, you got to have that injury history in there, because I think we're all kind of over left tackle injury, cyclical injury issues in Baltimore.
Definitely. Let's go back to the running back position here just a second, because Josina Anderson tweeted at one of her followers who asked about Derek's status to potentially be a Dallas Cowboy. And she quote tweeted this follower of hers and said that her understanding is that the Cowboys are not currently expected to be at the top of the running back market compensation wise in free agency. Dallas. Okay. Whenever I see Schefter, I'm like, what's happening? Dallas is expected to continue to survey the market within their range, and of course within the draft accordingly. I only mention that because they, along with the Ravens, are definitely been around these names, right? The Derricks, the
Saquon,
the Swifts, the Saquons, all these backs that have been out there. So that's just something there. And then what was calling my attention over here was just a safety signing. So looks like the Broncos are bringing in Brandon Jones on a 3-year deal at the safety position. So
did it say how much? I'm just curious for Geno's sake.
This is relevant for Geno for sure, right? Mm-hmm. 3 years, $20 million with Denver. 3 years, $20 million, $12.5 million guaranteed. Jordan Schultz on top of those numbers, who is having a heck of a day, Jordan, from a reporting standpoint. Good for him.
Yeah, seriously.
So there's a lot of people that are kind of
this is reporters' big day. This is the national guys. I mean, probably biggest week of the year.
Right. And then some updates on Swift. DeAndre Swift heading to Chicago, we know, is 3 years, $24 million. We knew that. But then Garofalo adds to it that he's going to get $16.5 million over the first 2 years of his deal. So that's an average of
still
$8.25 million over 2. Not sure how much that's going to mean, but maybe down into the specifics of some of these signings that it could be forthcoming. So
it's not totally backloaded. It seems like he's basically getting $8 a year.
Right.
So
in other news, Jackson Holliday just stole third. He's like unbelievable, man. I hope he's up at opening day with the Orioles. I got Orioles over here. I got Ravens here, free agency, you here. And we have over 4,100 concurrents right now, which shatters.
Is that a record?
Shatters previous records in terms of live streaming that we've done here inside the channel. So thank you for being here. Please like the video if you've been enjoying this piece of content. Subscribe to the Vault. Subscribe to Bobby Baltimore here on YouTube. You guys are incredible. This is numbers that are kind of unfamiliar in terms of concurrent live viewership. So
what's funny is like we're experimenting. We talked about this long before this came. We're experimenting of going noon live. We can't let this totally, like, it's first day of tampering period. I don't think this is going to be a regular thing for noon live streams, but boy, would I like that. Our previous record, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Bobby, was Christmas night. I guess technically the day after Christmas, after that San Francisco game that was just massive for the Ravens. And, people don't have to be up the next day. And so we were up at like midnight. I remember you wanting, we had hit like 3,000 live concurrents. And you
What did I
wanted to be
say?
like,
What's
you're like,
something
let's get to 4. And I was like, we're still 900 away from that. So we didn't hit 4, but where are we at now? Did you say?
just below
41.
4,200?
There we go.
So people made me wait January, February, March. They made me wait 3 months for that, but like they came back around. So thank you for this. And by the way, some of you are commenting on the format. You're right. We are kind of experimenting with this daily noon live stream. So we would love some live feedback as we continue. We're going to continue to obviously talk free agency in here and whatnot. But if you want to drop a comment based on what you guys think about just this time versus the 5 a.m. Eastern pre-recorded type of content that we've done for 2 years, would love to hear what you guys think.
Well,
So,
as you asked that question, let's throw this in there just so that fans are aware of what we're dealing with. Oh, and he also says it's also spring break for some folks, so we got to keep that in mind. But we are trying to hit like that lunch hour. The other thing, here's the only reason why we didn't experiment with this sooner, just to like peel back the curtain. Noon is best for me. Like my kids are at school. I'm not trying to juggle things. I love the noon format. The reason why we didn't even experiment with it during the season is that typically the Ravens, I wish they had like 11 a.m. press conferences like they did in the Brian Billick days. But if we do it at noon, we're usually done at 1. And then like John Harbaugh's Monday press conferences at 2. And then like the Wednesday big press conferences are at 3. So like we'd have a shelf life of like 2 hours before the next press conference, which is, during the season, a big bulk of where the news comes from. Hold on. I just saw somebody say Josh Jacobs. Did he get signed?
not that I've seen anything
Right.
yet.
Somebody just rooting for Josh Jacobs? Watch what we're doing here in the comments here. Don't.
Yeah, right. Nothing yet.
Okay. Maybe he's just rooting for Josh Jacobs. Okay.
Well, heck yeah. Why not? Come on over to
well,
Baltimore. I mean, that'd be great.
Especially for around this 8 million mark. I mean, one of the reasons why I said Derrick Henry for 6 is because I didn't think Josh Jacobs or Saquon would be in the single digits, but now we're talking. So let's keep trying to get that number to 6 though. Anyway, Lou is saying we want Ravens vault for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay.
Well, what I'll tell Lou is that we are on the final stages, negotiating wise, of being able to announce something really cool the night of the NFL draft. So you're going to be able to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and dessert that day. All right, with what we have coming up. And I'm fired up about it. So,
but really just dinner, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't start till like
it's
7.
It's gonna be huge, but we're not doing it that long.
There I go, being hyperbolic. It's just what I love doing that.
Okay, Trent explains. Yeah, I just want Josh Jacobs. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Trent. Thanks for clarifying.
So yeah, and here I go leaking,
right?
Say,
yeah, I like you're saying everything but it. You just can't even help yourself. Just to peel back the curtain even more. Me and Bobby are like, okay, we're not. This is like a Michael Scott situation. Remember when they were getting on the elevator and they were going to go negotiate to get their jobs back? Do you watch The Office, Bobby?
Yeah, well, I know enough.
And they're like, just to be clear, we're not going to say that we're going out of business as we go in there to get our jobs back. We're not going to. And Michael's like, I don't know. I might accidentally say it. I might say it.
That's me.
That's you in this situation.
That's me. And we did have pre-show meetings about that in past weeks. And here I go again. I feel pretty comfortable about this one. They're very interested in working with us. And,
no, that's true.
Then again, Todd was very interested in coming on the show.
We felt really comfortable about Todd. I mean, really, he was like, yeah.
Todd Monken was very, very excited to come on the show. And hopefully now that we're on the other side of the combine, he will still be excited to come on. So hopefully you can revisit that at some point. But
all right, Harry says, love the afternoon format, but we love watching y'all either way. Thank you, Harry. I saw somebody else saying that they like the live
wide receiver news.
What you got?
Wide receiver news. When we did our episode a couple weeks ago on the exercise related to like different free agent wide receivers, how they might look, monetary speaking, all that stuff. This guy was one that I wanted to bring in there just because I thought that for the betterment of the exercise. Gabe Davis is going to Jacksonville. So Gabe Davis is leaving Buffalo.
Okay.
And he is heading to Jacksonville. Buffalo is going to be insanely different. They unloaded their roster in the last week or so. unloaded it.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry to
let's
interrupt
see.
you.
It's a 3-year deal. I'm looking for the numbers with Gabe because that would be interesting just from a wide
See what the
receiver
market's
value.
at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only see
So
3 years. I don't see the money yet.
yeah.
But
So
from a Jags point of view, they let Calvin Ridley walk. And so they're picking up
yeah.
Gabe Davis. I mean, I'd put Ridley above Davis, but I'm sure they got a better monetary value. I mean, they got a cheaper deal, I'm sure.
Now, while we're on the Jacksonville discussion, just because this is a good segue,
Okay.
not that it needs to be discussed, but the Patriots are going to trade Mac Jones again. This is all this is going to be announced on Wednesday when the new league year begins, and I'm still looking
Mhm.
for the. We're still kind of keeping our eyes peeled here for the overall value of Gabe's deal here in Jacksonville. But Mac Jones looks like he's going to be the primary backup to Trevor Lawrence. And Mac, we know, was drafted by New England, had a Pro Bowl caliber year his rookie season under Bill Belichick, and then things just started getting very dysfunctional. There was not a lot of talent around him. Clearly, Bill was on his way out, and now he gets a change of scenery. He's originally from Jacksonville. Not sure how much that was a piece of the puzzle here, but for him personally, I'd have to think he was just ready for a change. Unfortunately for him, from a competition standpoint, it's a change to a place that has their guy. At least I think they have their guy in Trevor. I know he was kind of disappointing
Yeah, of
last year,
course. Yeah,
but
no.
but he's definitely their guy. And so
Yeah.
he's going to be so he'll have a chance now to, back up. What's tough about this there too, I would imagine, from a pride standpoint, they were in the same draft class. That's tough. Right? You're both first
Mhm.
rounders.
Mhm.
You go to your organizations and one works out and one doesn't. And now you're backing up the former number 1 pick. Tough.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
tough.
this business will humble you for sure.
Right?
Yeah. More quarterback news though. Is it this way? Here we go. So, Ian Rappaport, if this stuff is flying so quickly that if what we had preloaded before the show is somehow outdated an hour later, let us
Today's the
know.
day for
But
that.
today's that day. So, but at the time that we were setting up for this recording and pulled in for this slide, Ian Rappaport had reported that the Bucs are closing in on a deal with quarterback Baker Mayfield. So he's getting a 3-year deal worth $100 million, $50 million guaranteed. That's more than half less than Lamar Jackson, talking about draft class mates. But I got to say, I'm kind of happy for Baker here because he was entering. Listen, anybody that can get a second contract after being drafted as a quarterback by either the Browns or the Jets to survive one of those two organizations and get us, a big long-term deal. It's not as big as, like we said, Lamar or whoever else, and he was drafted before Lamar. But if you can survive being a drafted quarterback from the Jets or the Browns, then for some reason I just feel like I'm happy for you. And he's in the NFC, so whatever. And I do remember going into last season, there were like reports that the Ravens could potentially be interested in him as a backup to Lamar, right? And so the fact that he was teetering in on some teams starting to say, "Ooh, could we get him as a backup instead of as a starter?" And he just went and he took that 1-year deal and he did exactly what he needed to do to make sure he got a long-term deal. So 3 years, 100 million, 50 million guaranteed. Good for him. Not, I'm sure what he wanted when he was drafted high in 2018, but I'm sure based off of where he's been since then, he's got to be a happy guy this morning.
I'm happy for him. Yeah, I'm happy
Yeah.
for him because you think about what happened after Cleveland, right? Cup of
Mhm.
coffee in LA.
Mhm.
Carolina was a disaster, right? Goes to Tampa, like has to beat out that quarterback room last year. Does so, has a great year, and now, the fruits of that labor is realized. So great comeback story in a lot of ways, and with Mike Evans still being there as well, because of him wanting to be a Buck for life. Good situation to be in for Baker and
Yeah,
company in the NFC.
he's got Mike Evans. That's a good situation for him.
Yep.
So
Let's see what we have here from Ian Rappaport. He refers to this move as a splash, so that got my attention. Dolphins star defensive tackle Christian Wilkins is heading to Las Vegas. He gets a 4-year deal worth $110 million base value. 84.75 is guaranteed. And so one of the top free agents at the defensive tackle position is now off the market from Miami
okay, so I want
to
to compare
Vegas.
this to Matabike.
Yeah, so let's bring up Chris and Justin's numbers that you put together here. So let's
What
see.
were the
Let me
numbers
put
you
this
said?
big screen. I'll read them off. Let's put this big screen. Let's take this away on the bottom line. So Wilkins, Christian Wilkins from Miami to Vegas is getting 4 years, 110 million base value, 84.75 million, and that's all that's out there right now. In terms of the contract breakdown
what was the
itself.
84.7 was what number?
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. Okay. So this is 4 years, just like Justin. Justin got 98. You said he got 110?
Base.
Yet again, the reason why EDC needed to make that deal before free agency happened, because my goodness, it's already. I mean,
look at this. Look at the way it's aging.
Signed this morning, but they announced it on Friday.
Look at this.
In a matter of the weekend, he got 12 million more overall. Now we'll see. You said the guaranteed was 84.7?
84.75.
That's got to be the total guaranteed. There's no way it's the full guaranteed, because that would have beat Chris Jones too. So
right.
It's probably the total guaranteed, and that beats Justin Matabike by 9 million.
In terms of average annual value, Wilkins comes in at 27.5. Matabike comes in at 24.5.
So that's 3 million more per year. Oh my goodness.
Eric is savvy.
Oh,
Eric.
Somebody just asked in the comments, what exactly is Eric cooking? Right here, this is what Eric's cooking. It's not as sexy because it's your own player. And so if the Ravens just did that and brought somebody else over and paid that much for it, then at least that's my feeling. That's how I usually feel like fans react. Just because it's your own player and you're used to him doesn't mean it's not a massive deal for the organization. Massive. Like, it's 2 deals later and it's already looking like a bargain.
It's not even been 48 hours.
It hasn't been 48 hours. And it was Justin Matabike who led all interior defensive linemen with 13 sacks last year.
Eric did this with Mark Andrews, I feel like.
Yeah, Mark Andrews, I think when he signed him was like number 2 or 3. He wasn't like the number 1 paid tight end.
Like, Eric is, man, he moves in silence. He's so incredibly savvy. That's the word that comes to mind. And so now Justin, he said during today's press conference, remember, he was like, it was important that we get this deal done prior to free agency. Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding.
No kidding. From a team building standpoint, this was a big deal. So now that set the scene. And now Wilkins comes in now, and Chris, what did he come in yesterday? Chris Jones, or over the weekend?
He was Saturday. Yep, he was Saturday.
Yeah. So, man.
Yeah, and like I said, and you guys know me, I like to be financially responsible. I'm willing to kick a little bit down the road, but not too much. But there's plenty of ways to make money right now. There's plenty of ways to make money without pushing too much down to the future. So, we'll see. Well, again, I don't think they're going to be big spenders. I don't think they're going to go and get a wide receiver, but I do think there's some money here in the running back market. So,
how about that?
Need to see what's happening with these top tier guys. There's just no news on them yet.
How about that? Less than 48 hours later, Matabike now becomes the 4th highest paid defensive tackle based on AAV. That's the average annual value.
He's the 4th highest paid now. And he deserves to be top 5. I mean, somebody asked me what I thought of the deal, and I was like, it's a super fair market deal, and now it's looking a little bit on the bargain side. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still a ton of money, but it's like You just beat these two huge deals. What if they had waited? What if they didn't get it done on Friday and Wilkins is coming in at 110 million, 27.5 per year, and Chris Jones even beats Aaron Donald. Woo!
Oh, man, what a win. What a total win.
Now Justin's just got to deliver. Obviously, we all think he will.
Unbelievable. So this was a little bit earlier on at the wide receiver position. Again, a guy that we had an exercise on when we did the free agency episode. The Colts and wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. have reached agreement on a 3-year, $70 million deal, $46 million of which is guaranteed, according to Jordan Schultz. He's had a tumultuous few years for sure. He's had a different QB each season he's played in Indianapolis, but now he's going to be with Anthony Richardson, of course, their rising second-year quarterback who was injured last year. I guess, did the Ravens see him at all? No, they got Gardner that game, right? That day, I think it was Gardner Minshew, that rain-soaked day in Baltimore last year, right? That they lost in overtime. Yeah, it was Gardner Minshew.
Yes.
So anyway, I only say this because we talked about him a little bit since he hit those, he met those qualities that I know I want, and I think you would welcome too at the wide receiver position. You know, that big body guy who's just, man, he had a phenomenal catch against the Ravens in that opening month or September, October, whenever they played last fall. And so no surprise, but he's going to remain a Colt.
Yeah. And this is another example of why the Ravens, specifically Eric DeCosta, keeps drafting in the first round a wide receiver. This is $23.3 million per year. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And so here's my prediction. The first time the Ravens ever pay like legit top 5 wide receiver money will be the equivalent of what like Justin Madubuike is on defense. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be the first time they're going to do it. I think they're going to pay their own. It's going to be the guy that we drafted as a wide receiver.
Potentially Zay.
Potentially Zay would be the first one up, right? Because right now it's not
going to be
Bateman. It's not going to be Bateman.
Hollywood's gone.
I mean, he could change that story. But obviously, yeah, Hollywood was traded away. And now by the way, he's a free agent. It'll be, I'm really interested to see what happens with him. Because part of the reason why he wanted to be traded was that he wanted to prove that once it was time to get paid, that he was, that guy. So, and then things didn't work out. The situation in Arizona didn't work out. But anyway, that's what I think. I think Zay would be the next guy. The first time I predict the Ravens pay top 5 wide receiver money, it's when they truly hit on a wide receiver. So
makes a lot of sense. Makes a whole lot of sense. How about in terms of the overall?
This is other news that just happened over the weekend since our last. There was so much that happened.
Right, there was.
Since our last episode.
And this time last year, what was happening was the Ravens losing Ben Powers, who priced himself way out of Baltimore with a fantastic 2022 season that he ended up going to Denver. And so because of that, and him being one of the Ravens' own, they now receive a compensatory pick. Jeff Zrebiec was all over it. A 4th rounder, so number 134 overall. Mm-hmm. That is an extra 4th round pick. So they now have 2 in the upcoming draft in April. So they'll pick at 30th overall, should they stay put in the first round. 62nd overall in the second. 93rd in the third. And they have 2 in the 4th, 129 and now 134 again that they just received via compensatory. 164 overall, that's in the 5th, and then 2 7ths, 229 and 251st overall, respectively there. So you knew this was coming. It's just a matter of where, and they get it right in the mid-round.
So here's something to think about since we're talking about comp picks. As just kind of on the fly, I didn't do any homework on this. But so the Ravens have continued to lead the entire NFL with the most compensatory picks since the inception of this system.
And it's not particularly close, right?
Well, it used to not be particularly close, but now teams are closing in. It's much closer. I want to say the Cowboys are up there now. I can look it up. So I don't know if that's like Eric DaCosta looking at it a little bit different, or if it started happening, the gap started closing a little bit more when Ozzie was still in charge. I'd have to look into it because I'm talking about this on the fly. But we're talking about the Ravens getting a running back, right? And so he is going to, whoever they sign, it's going to knock out a potential compensatory pick that they lose. Okay, so on the fly, who are people? Actually, the Ravens could have a ton because we know we're going to lose PQ, right? And if he gets a big enough deal and stays healthy, that could be a third rounder right there.
Queen's definitely gone.
So, but well, sure, but like I'm trying to think of this okay, so Queen could be a third. Okay, Gino could be, I don't know, depending on how big the deal is.
But as a former, does any part of that equation relate to like their draft status in the past?
No. So, well, I could be wrong, but I mean, there's a lot of intricacies to it. But if you're going to look at it from a broad kind of standpoint, you're looking at how big of a deal they get. So it's the deal that they're getting that has probably the most impact. Playing time in the following year has a big impact too. There's probably other factors, but those are like the two big ones that I usually think of first, of like what's gonna like impact it. So if Ben Powers, I believe he started all last year. I don't know what injuries he may have had here and there, but to be a fourth round. So Gino, I'm assuming he's going to become a starter. Maybe not as big of a contract as Queen, not maybe for sure, but maybe Gino could be around the fourth, right? So you could also lose Kyle Van Noy is going to be in that if or Clowney. Those are two guys that could get. They're going to count. Mollett, Darby, assuming if the Raven. Okay. Oh, Gus, Zeitler. Holy cow!
Here's the Gabe Davis numbers when you finish that thought.
Well, go ahead. My point is, I was about to say, well, if you sign a running back, are you going to lose too many compensatory picks? Now, you definitely don't want a running back to knock out what Queen could get you, but there's a whole lot of other lists here that maybe could cancel each other out. So the Ravens can have what I'm saying is they don't have to wait for like the cut market or wait for whatever date it is in May where it doesn't count anymore against the compensatory pick formula. They've got some here where next year, if they don't re-sign some of these guys that we just talked about, next year there could be definitely more than one comp pick, depending on who they sign that could cancel it out. What do you got on Gabe?
Yeah, Diana Rossini, again, Gabe Davis spent his beginning of his career here with the Bills. He's just 24, former fourth round pick in 2020. We know that he's going to Jacksonville, but we didn't have the figures until now. It's 3 years, $39 million with incentives that could get him to $50 million. So 3 for 39.
Okay.
Not so as much relevant because
not as much as who were we just talking about? I've already forgotten. Oh, it was Pittman that we were talking about.
Yeah, Pittman.
So Pittman was at
Indianapolis, 3 years, 70.
Where did I write that number at? Yeah, I think he was around 23 million. This one's 13 million. So
Yep. Pittman was 3 years, 70 with 46 guaranteed, and Gabe is 3 for 39 with incentives that could get him to 50. So that's the latest there with the wide receiver position. Again, not market setting deals, but that's what's going on right now with the wide receiver position. We know there are many more within that category from a free agency standpoint. Shall we catch up with Tyus Bowser like Aaron Wilson
Let's catch up with Tyus. Yes, because we actually got not a full picture, but we got more light on this situation and what was going on with his knee.
Yeah. So Tyus, as we all know, did not play down for the Ravens a year ago. Very disappointing, very mysterious, a lot of mixed messages, a lot of unclear answers to reporters' questions from a team standpoint. And even from Tyus himself, by the way, in terms of where he was at. So Aaron Wilson, NFL reporter, who we've used some of his materials over the last hour and change since we started this. By the way, we're coming up on 5,000 concurrents. So
we're 12 away. Let's do let's do it.
Let's get to 5,000 here.
Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, everything. Do it all.
Let's get to 5,000. By the way, if you're on a platform and you're wondering, wait a second, there's only a few hundred on this. What are they talking about? The way we do our stream is that we combine all of our platforms. So this is a combined number, which we just hit 5,007 and counting. So thank you guys so much for this record-breaking stream that we're doing here, this simulcast. You can go check out our YouTube content if you're on Twitter. We release daily content related to the Ravens all year round, and we're glad you're here. Aaron Wilson caught up with Tyus Bowser. I think this was probably in Houston because that's where Tyus is from, and that's where Aaron is based. I know that because our guy Jake Asman, Sarah, is buddies with Aaron, and I believe they shared an Airbnb together at the NFL Combine a couple weeks ago in Indianapolis. So they are boys, and everybody, now everybody's got the Gabe numbers at 3 years, $39 million. So just making sure that's good to go. He's heading to Jacksonville, and here is Tyus Bowser. Not the best audio quality, so I may pause this frequently here just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what Tyus is saying with Aaron Wilson.
Feel healthier?
Yeah, I'm feeling all right, man.
Yeah.
Day by day process.
What happened? I think I read it was a knee injury?
Yeah, just had some knee fluid that, really couldn't figure out what the problem was, and that kind of pretty much helped me out.
Okay, so he's got some knee fluid. That's what I heard there. He had to get some knee fluid, just in case you guys can't hear this great, because I tried to mess with it in Adobe Audition and just couldn't get it quite down. So we'll have a couple more pauses just so we're on the same page.
You were playing great, and unfortunately, injuries happen. 100% injury rate in football. How optimistic and hopeful are you for next season?
I'm definitely excited next season.
Yeah.
I've been able to figure out what the problem is, and now I'm in the process of getting myself back to what I know.
Did you have?
I'll definitely be back next season, and I'm now in the process of. What was that last part?
I couldn't hear it.
Hold on.
You can move it back. Yeah.
I've been able to figure out what the problem is, and now I'm in the process of getting myself back to what I know.
Did you have?
And now I'm in the process of getting myself back to where I know I could be.
Yeah, and he was saying, he's like, I now know what the problem is. So maybe part of the reason why it was a mystery is maybe he didn't quite understand what's happening. I don't know.
Okay.
But he goes on.
Did you get a drain?
Yeah, I had surgery. Just a quick knee scope, and kind of just took care of that.
Okay, so Tyus had another surgery.
I say
another, right? Yeah. A knee scope, and that was
to drain.
So he's now in that JK category of like where JK was an off season ago of having multiple.
Well, is that the end of it?
No.
Okay,
we got more.
go ahead.
We have more to decipher.
Okay.
With the Ravens, is that probably where you'll be?
I mean, I'll see, man. Really have to see how Eric is feeling, and kind of go from there and see what happens.
We'll have to see where Eric's at. We'll have to see where he's at. Does not commit to wanting to be back in Baltimore, but he will in just a second here.
Well, hold on. It's not about committing to be back in Baltimore. He's already under contract.
He's under contract.
What that really means, like, of course he's committed. He can't break the contract. The Ravens can cut him though. So the fact that he can't even say, like, to me, the answer would be like, if somebody were to ask me and I'm under contract somewhere, like, are you going to be back? It's like, well, yeah, I'm under contract, but he seems to, because he couldn't say, oh, I'm under contract. I think he knows. I think that was probably, not that we didn't already know that was going to be a possibility that he's cut, a very big possibility. I think this just kind of takes it to another level.
Here's more.
Last one for you. How excited are you to get back to what you were doing, which was high production? And
I'm excited, man. It's just excited to just get myself back healthy, back to myself, because I know I'm capable. I know I still have it in me to be able to do even more than what I've done, the past 7 years that I've been there. And I'm excited for what the future has for me.
Just expressing optimism, confidence that he's going to be back, that he can be back, and then he will be back. Keep moving here.
Ideally, you like it up there? Everything's good?
I mean, I love it out there.
Yep.
The Ravens have done so good to me. Love the coaching staff, the players down there. It's gonna be it's gonna be an up year. They just signed Justin back, so that's awesome. To see a key player back on that team, and hopefully I'm back up there next year. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so the end there again, wanting to be back, but man, kind of some twists and turns in that minute and 40 seconds, huh?
I feel bad for him. I mean, I think we all see the writing on the wall. Even the way he's talking, he seems to know the writing on the wall. It's really unfortunately, like as frustrating as it's been on the outside looking in, of like, where are you? What's going on? Why aren't you playing? Like it's got to be 10 times more frustrating for him. Like this is his life. This is his profession. This is what he loves. This is everything. And not only does he know that the writing's on the wall that he's likely to be cut, and the Ravens will get around $5 million of cap space for it. Not only does he know that he's about to be cut, but now he's going to head to a market where he can't say, I mean, he's trying to say it, right? He's trying to say here, oh yeah, I know what's wrong now. I'm going to be great. I'm going to be coming back to who I am. Like he's going to be in an extremely tough position to negotiate with whoever it is, whether like EDC is like, okay, we'll talk about it. He cuts them or who knows what, whoever he's going to be negotiating with, he's going to have to do a 1-year deal. And it could very well be like a veteran minimum. Like, and that just stinks coming off of like what I'm sure he thought he was going into. And I still don't know how he injured that knee. It was during the off season, I believe. And I remember the first sign of it when he was coming to report. I think it was for the mandatory camp. It might have been training camp, and he comes in with the limp, and everybody's like, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And here we are. The whole season went by, and he never made it. So I feel bad for him. I do. I feel really bad for him. And I just hope he really does get healthy and he's able to return, because I loved him. He was an excellent, like, Sam linebacker who could drop back. And the Ravens were fortunate to get Kyle Van Noy last minute who could fulfill that role. But the Ravens, we talk about the edge being a need, and that is true, but it's going to be somebody that needs to be in that Kyle Van Noy and Tyus Bowser mold that can drop back and not just be the guy that's just like, see quarterback, get quarterback. Like what he did was more complicated than that.
I'd be really surprised if he ends up in Baltimore next year, especially given that answer in the middle part of that interview. So anyway, I love the tweet that Brad Spielberger just posted a little while ago. He said the Ravens knew what was on the horizon. LOL. The Madubuike deal is already aging like a fine Bordeaux.
I wonder what Justin is feeling.
He's got to be all over the map.
Because here's one thing that came out from that press conference that I thought was interesting, just based off of like what Adam Schefter reported. And we played months ago at some point during the regular season. Justin Madubuike went on Adam Schefter's podcast, and Adam kind of talking about his upcoming guest. It was before Justin was on, because the way it happened is he interviewed Justin on like a Friday and then waited over the weekend to post it. And then that Monday he gave some commentary on it. And the commentary was that the Ravens had already tried to sign him. And the way I remembered it is it made it sound like it was like in the off season. But what Eric DaCosta just said in his press conference is he's like, because somebody had asked him, like, were you kind of feeling the pressure of the market to get this deal done when you did? And that's when when Eric admitted, yeah, the market did have a role. But he said, he goes, but you know what? We never really tried to sign Justin Madubuike to a long-term deal until the regular season. So it sounds like they really didn't do it heading into it. It was more during the regular season. And then I don't know if they were super far apart, because then he cut to just saying, but then we all agreed that it was better for Justin to focus on the season and then we would revisit it. So so I thought that was interesting that it wasn't until the regular season, according to Eric, that they really didn't try to get a long-term deal. They didn't try to do it heading into his contract, fourth and final year. So, but my goodness, if Justin Madubuike had said on Friday or whatever day, nope, I just want to see the market first, then this franchise tag may have lasted a really, really long time.
Stayed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it might have gone the whole year.
It would have played on
my
that thing.
goodness, if he decided to be like, nah, I'm good. Woo. Yeah.
No doubt.
Very fortunate that they came to terms on Friday.
So a couple of these key dates upcoming, Sarah, in our quick hits section here. What are they? One relates to OBJ.
Yeah, so as we're waiting for, news to keep piling in here, Thursday is a key date. On Thursday, Odell Beckham Jr.'s 2025 salary would be fully guaranteed. So obviously they would have to cut him before then, but my guess is they'll do it before the league year opens Wednesday at 4 p.m. But another big one, and this is for Ronnie Stanley, kind of what's going on there. March 18th. What are we at? Today's March 11th. So about a week. March 18th, if Stanley is still on the roster, he gets a $4 million roster bonus for 2024. So that will be your indication. Lots of people have been asking, do you cut Ronnie Stanley? And of course, if they did, it would have to be a post-June 1 designation. But that's how they would designate it. They would need to do it before March 18th if they don't want another $4 million of a roster bonus being on there. So my prediction has been that they won't cut him. I think it's just too much dead money. And I think that you can get the same amount of money that you would get by cutting him with a post-June 1. Even you could get the same amount of money by asking him to do a pay cut. We've talked about this before. The Ravens have plenty of leverage to go to Ronnie Stanley and say, hey, we need to do a pay cut. And the leverage is that if we do cut you, you're not going to get more than this if you went out on the market. Now, that doesn't mean Ronnie doesn't have some leverage back, because he could be like, well, okay, then you guys can eat all the dead money. So my view is if you instead were to let go of Morgan Moses, who was dealing with injuries, not as big, but was seemingly breaking down at the end of last season, by releasing him, you got to keep one of those two tackles. You just can't start over that with that many tackles not on your roster. Instead, you let go of Morgan Moses and then ask for a pay cut. And then by doing that, you're still saving the same amount if you did cut Ronnie, but then you're not stuck with all the cap money, both on this year's cap and next year's cap. So to me, it wouldn't be surprising if on March 18th, he's still on the roster. But then at that point, if he is, you absolutely know that he's going to be on for 2024.
Yep. Gozo 1985 said he just tuned in. Do we have a franchise tag for this year left, or did Justin eat it? Remember, the designation window to place the tag on a player has come and went. So franchise tags are no longer able to be designated for 2024.
And even let's say, because there's a 2-week window to designate it. Right. And the Ravens usually wait till the last minute. Most teams wait for the last minute. It's a deadline-driven league. If they had designated the tag at the beginning of the window and signed him before the end of the window, they still couldn't use another tag. Each team gets one franchise tag. I promise you that the NFLPA would be up in arms if teams started using franchise tags on more than one player at a year.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it looks like we've reached our first lull of the opening day in
Okay.
terms of free agency news. Again, the legal tampering window, the negotiating window began at noon Eastern. It is now 1:54 Eastern this afternoon, Monday, March 11th. So, what do you say?
What do I say? What do you
We'll be back
mean?
tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow unless something crazy happens.
We're definitely back tomorrow. I'm sure there's going to be a massive, massive amount of news between now and tomorrow. I think we'll probably have a lot more clarity. I'm hoping we'll have a lot more clarity on the running back market. I mean, what if we were still here 24 hours later and Saquon and Henry and Josh Jacobs still hasn't signed a deal? You know, that would be crazy. Or, you know what I mean? They can't sign it till Wednesday, but there's an announcement of it. So we'll see. We'll see. Definitely going to keep watching that. I don't know, Bobby, if there, let's put this out there. If Saquon signed tonight at 5, are we trying to go live again, or are we going to wait till noon tomorrow?
Oh, we're going live. We're
Okay.
going live. We will discuss
our offline conversation heading into this.
we will discuss things as a team, but
Yeah.
I would like to go live. Let me rephrase that. I don't demand things around here. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully
No,
not.
you don't. You don't. But not that I'm saying I think that the Ravens will sign Saquon. I'm just putting it out there. So
Well, like we said, we're going to be monitoring the heck out of everything. So we'll be ready to go whenever something goes down. So shout out
busy
to a couple
Monday.
of our
Busy Monday. Matabike. Now we just find out it's an even more beautiful deal than we thought on Friday.
Yeah.
T. Higgins wants out of the AFC North.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy's coming to the AFC North. Steve
Russ
Smith
is
doesn't
coming.
care. Steve Smith doesn't care.
No.
Russell Wilson's coming to the AFC North.
Yeah.
My prediction is he'll be the starter. We don't want to see him relive those Seattle days. Pittman got re-signed. Gabe Davis got signed. We're just recapping everything.
Yeah. Did you say
Mac Wilson, Swift is off. Tony Pollard's off. They both are $8 million a year deals. Pollard to Tennessee, Swift to the Bears. Just a busy first day, and it's not going to end.
Yeah, and we just a second ago were over 5,400 concurrents. So this was a wild stream. We appreciate you guys for dropping by. Shout out to a couple of our OG patrons who are supporting us here inside the channel through Patreon. They get a monthly shout out for $4.99, and it certainly helps us out on the back end, which we appreciate. So, Major, Devin, thank you both, and partner, thanks to you. We will keep following things as they kind of come in with the news cycle. And yeah, it sure looks like this is sort of a good place to throw a placeholder in here, just because it's our first lull of the day. I'm sure there'll be other waves, and we'll be ready for them. So shout out to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this episode and our entire channel all throughout our off season. We appreciate them. And if you go to the link that we have included in the show notes below and you click on it, you can use VAULT10 as a discount code. That's VAULT10, and you'll get 10% off your next purchase. So for my co-host and partner, Sarah Ellison, I'm Bobby Trosset signing off from this first day of free agency live stream. We're going to be live all week at noon, unless, like Sarah's kind of speaking into existence here, some big acquisition takes place. So be on the lookout for that. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.